Hey everyone, this is Lomi, and this week I'm doing some more work on Laele's hanfu. While the base garment is done, I wanted to add some more layers. Doing the undergarments would make the most sense, but that's less fun, so today I'll be making the top layer, which is something we would refer to in English as something like an overrobe with big sleeves. From what I've read, this is referred to in Chinese as a daxiushan, but I'm not positive I'm saying that right, so I'll stick to calling it a robe so I don't embarrass myself. To make a pattern for this, I start by tracing the pattern I created for the hanfu's top, which is available for download on my website. All I'll be doing is making the sides longer and adding on to the sleeves. The length I add to the front and back is based on the doll's height. I measured down from the top of her shoulder to the floor to determine how long it should be, then add a little extra to account for seam allowances. The sleeves will be about 3/4 of the length of the robe, with the inner undersleeve rounded. During my research, I saw two different styles for this garment. One had extra triangular pieces added to the side seams to make it more full. The other had straight sides and was close-fitting. This is the style I decided to make, because I didn't want the designs on the fabric I use for the robe to overpower or detract from the plain chiffon underneath. Aside from making sure the shape of the neckline is in place, I really only have to draw the front half of the pattern. I put a line across the top of the shoulder, which lets me fold my tracing paper in half along that line, so I don't have to draw the same shapes twice. I pin the pattern to itself to keep everything lined up nice, then cut the tracing paper off the roll. With the pattern still folded vertically, I fold it horizontally too, so I only have to cut out the shape of the sleeve and side once. This will make the whole thing nice and uniform. When I unpin the pattern from itself and unfold it, I can cut the front open and cut out the neckline. I originally planned to lay this huge pattern out on the fabric and cut all the way around it to be sure everything was super accurate, but I didn't have enough space to lay out such a big garment. At our old house, I used to lay out big pieces like this on the living room floor, because the wood floor worked well for keeping everything flat, but our new place is almost entirely carpeted. So instead, I folded the pattern and fabric both in half and cut around it with my little rotary cutter on my table. It was still almost too big for my cutting mat, and keeping things positioned on the table in a way I could still film the process made things pretty awkward. I cut the neckline out later using scissors. Once everything's cut, it's time to sew. The sewing process is mostly simple, just time-consuming because the seams are all so long. I put the fabric right sides together, pin together the sides of the robe and the bottom edges of the sleeves, then use a straight stitch to sew from the open cuff of the sleeve and around the sleeve's bottom edge. Once I get to the underarm, I sew up at an angle and then pivot sharply to sew down the side of the robe. This creates a little triangle in the underarm that pulls funny at first, so you'll need to clip that seam allowance a little bit just by snipping with your scissors toward the peak on that triangle. That way the sleeves will lay smoothly when the robe is turned right side out. To finish the seam allowance and prevent the chiffon from fraying, I use a zigzag stitch set to a really short length. My stitch length is set to right around 1 mm. Be careful going into the clipped triangle under the arm. Where the hem allowance is clipped, you have a lot less room to finish the edges. You may prefer to use fray check in that particular spot. Both sides of the robe get sewn this way, closing the sleeve and side and then finishing the edge. Once again, I want to thank my supporters on Patreon for helping make this project possible. Since I'm without a day job now, your support is all that keeps me stocked with sewing supplies. Thank you all so much. Once both sides and sleeves are done, I'll move on to finishing the front opening of the robe. I do this by folding the edge over once, then again to create a rolled hem. Making a rolled hem around the neck, where the edge is curved, can be a challenge, but only because it's hard to keep it laying flat. As long as you use extra pins, it shouldn't be too tough. There are also special sewing machine feet that do this for you. I actually have a rolled hem foot that I use from time to time, but most people don't have them, so I don't like using them in tutorial videos. You can make rolled hems of any width by hand like this. It just takes a little longer. Once the whole front opening is pinned, up both sides and around the neck, I sew the hem in place with a regular straight stitch. You can see I use more and more pins as we get up to the curved neck part. If anything comes unfolded, I keep a pair of tweezers handy to tuck the raw edge back to the inside. I hate sewing over the top of pins and don't really recommend doing it, but in places like the curved neck hem here, it's really the best way to keep the shaped hem from coming unfolded. So if you must go over the top of pins, like me right now, going very slow can help prevent problems. The slower you go, the more likely it is that if you hit a pin, your needle will slowly slide to one side or the other, instead of hitting the pin hard and bending it, or bending the needle, or jamming your machine. However, this can leave nicks in the sides of your pins that will snag fabric, so make sure to check them afterward. If they aren't still smooth where the needle rubbed against them, throw them away now to save yourself a headache later. After the front opening and neckline are hemmed, I finish the ends of the big open sleeves the same way, making a rolled hem by folding the edge in once, then folding again. While you could absolutely finish this garment by using a zigzag stitch on the raw edges and then folding them to the inside just once, those stitches would be visible through something this sheer, and I feel like the rolled hems just give an all-around more professional, more polished look. Not to mention they're more secure. Last of all, I finished the very bottom edge of the robe with, you guessed it, another rolled hem. By now my chiffon is a little frayed, so I clip off the frayed strands as I fold to keep things nice and tidy. this is the only seam where I begin and end with a backstitch, because every other seam either overlaps itself or ends up being enveloped in another hem, so there's no need to finish them. Once this hem is complete, my robe is done. While some of these also have ties in the front at around knee height, I omit them from mine because I don't intend to ever tie it closed. The design I picked deliberately falls to the sides and back to expose the beautiful full front of the skirt underneath. As a little extra finishing touch, I also created rolled hems on a long, narrow strip of white chiffon to create a pibot, which is draped over her arms. Once I make some proper undergarments, her outfit will finally be complete. I'm thinking of making them in pink chiffon, so it'll be visible layered at the collar and help bring together the colors in the robe and the rest of her outfit. But that's all for today. Thanks for watching. Bye. How do you say that? People. People. I'm never gonna get this right.